Oh. Hello and welcome to another episode of Veterans to Success, the podcast where I get to interview seemingly ordinary people with extraordinary lives. And today I've got with me no other than Dr. Angela Pearson. Hello, Angela. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing just fine. Thanks for asking. How about
Uh,
yourself?
yeah, I'm brilliant too. Thanks for asking, and thank you for joining me today. And I know your story, right? And it's uh it's pretty fabulous. So I want you to tell me, I want you to go back a little bit, not too many years, just a little while when you were a young girl. What was going on in your life, please?
Well, I'll start from the beginning, but I'll do some fast tracking.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I was a toddler, I was very quiet. So quiet that my parents, for whatever reason, decided to put me in pre-kindergarten special education preschool. So now let's fast forward. I got all the way to the end of my junior year and I found out I was pregnant. So I became a single parent at 17 years old who needed to finish high school. Now, this was a little difficult, but I did graduate on time with my class. Fast forward some more, I lived in what we call the worst projects in northern Richmond, Virginia for over a year. I was working two jobs and still scratching to survive. And then one day, I saw this pale skinned, handsome guy with this uniform on, like the guy on the Cracker Jack box, the candy. And he came and he talked to me for about an hour and convinced me that the US Navy was the best thing since sliced bread. So guess what? I signed up.
Right. No, thank you for that. And that was a very fast coverage of your childhood. Now, the thing is that there was a little sprinkling, if you like, of
Mhm.
tough times, right? That my life might have been a struggle, but I'd like you to share with me a little bit more because I want to really get to know Angela Pearson, Dr. Angela Pearson, because I know from our chats that we've had that things were a little bit unusual for you as a child, weren't they? Tell me how you were getting on as a
Yeah.
child living with your parents and what went on.
So I'll tell you about the wonderful childhood home that I grew up in, which still stands today. So whenever I go home to Virginia to visit my stepfather, I go to this house that I'm going to tell you about.
Right, okay.
So this was a two-bedroom house with no running hot water, no central heat or central air, and there were nine children and two adults in this house. I was the middle child.
So that was a little
Um,
bit, that was cozy then, wasn't it,
yes,
really?
that's a nice way of putting it.
And so how was the childhood? How did that go? How
My childhood was interesting. Being the middle child, and I honestly don't know if it was because I was the middle child that it went this way, but I seemed to get all of the leftovers, the hand-me-downs, and I was the child that didn't ask for much, where my other siblings were constantly saying, "Can I have the latest this? Can I have the newest that?" I was that child that I would go with my mother, who was no longer with us, but she would clean houses. And we would go to these affluent neighborhoods while she would do housekeeping, and I would work with her. So from a young age, like maybe 6 or 7, I learned, how to clean. My mother was OCD when it came to cleaning, like every piece of dust, cracks,
uh,
corners, you
so
know.
she was pretty cool at cleaning then, wasn't she?
Well, yeah, white glove treatment. Basically, at home, we could not wear our shoes in the house. So she could actually put
Wow.
on white gloves and rub her hands across anywhere in the floor, and it would not be dirty at all. Believe it. Wear white socks, slide across the floor, they're clean. I
Hey, I
kid
tell
you
you what,
not.
she would have made a great sergeant, wouldn't she?
Oh, she was a pretty civilian drill sergeant.
So you got the drill before you even went in. Uh,
I
uh,
did.
and what sort of relationship did you have with your parents?
Well, I was in the house with my mother and my stepfather. And I met my biological father at 6 years old. And it was really funny because my biological father and my stepfather were best friends at some point.
Right.
And
Oh.
yes, and my biological father was an over the road truck driver. So he would leave for 3 weeks at a time and he would come home once every 3 weeks. And he asked my stepfather, who was his best friend at that time, to, you know, like look out for the family. And, you know, my stepdad looked out for the family. Eventually he took over the family. So,
That's taking your responsibility quite seriously, then, isn't it?
oh,
Really.
above and beyond, yes.
And
uh,
and sadly, your mother succumbed to illness, didn't she, when you were quite young?
Yeah, yeah, I was actually in the military, in the Navy, because I've been in two branches, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But I was actually in the second year of my naval service, going through a horrible divorce. I had three small children, all under the ages of 9, and I found out my mother had cancer. And it's just it's sad but interesting because the way that I found out, I would always call home. I lived 2 hours away, so I was stationed 2 hours away, and I would call and check in like maybe once or twice a week. And
Yeah.
I can remember one particular week calling and not getting anybody, which was weird because at my mother's house, no, it was always somebody there. So, you
Yeah.
know, there was not a chance that there would never be anybody there. And so I ended up calling a neighbor, and the neighbor said, "Well, you haven't heard?" And I'm like, "Haven't heard what?" And she's like, "Your mom's in the hospital. She's been in the hospital for a couple of weeks." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" So I called the hospital, and, you know, that's how I found out that my mother was terminally ill. And I
Right.
eventually had to take a 26-day military leave to help my mother at her end of life, to be a
Oh,
caregiver. Yeah, it was tough.
I bet you as well. And you mentioned that you had three children by this time. Just remember, because you were pregnant at a young age, right?
Hmm.
And you still, how did that work with the military? Where was your military career at the time? Then were you just thinking of going in, or were you already in, or what happened?
So I had two children at the time that I went in. I was 21 when I went in. So I had two small children, which I had to give up guardianship to two different family members in order to just go in as a single parent. And then after I got in, I got married, and then I had another child.
Right.
So yeah, but it was tough having two small kids and wanting to go in, knowing that I had to leave them for up to a year before I could get custody of them back after I did the guardianship.
And how did that must have been a real struggle. Well, I'm only making the assumption you're going to give me the feedback in a minute. How did that make you feel? You know, you had this burning desire to join the military, and yet you're the mother of two young children. What was going on in your mind? What was the struggle?
So I'll tell you the pivotal moment that really made me go in or want to go into the military is, as I said before, I was working two jobs, a full-time job and a part-time job. So I was barely seeing my children because in between both of those jobs, you know, I was dropping them off at daycare or either at a babysitter at nighttime. And I lived in a very bad neighborhood. And I can remember something really happened. It was a murder. And I ended up coming out of my apartment and walking down two flights of stairs. And when I rounded the corner at the bottom of the stairs, I saw this guy lying in a pool of blood. I had never seen a dead body before.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, people were screaming, the cops came. That day in particular made me understand that I can't raise my children in this environment. I can't be in this environment. I need to find something else to do.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to explore that, because from just and you know, people do it generally, but I find that veterans and guys in the military, guys being men and women, do that
Mm-hmm.
because like when the stuff hits the fan, we just get on with it, don't we? So a lot
We
of the
go.
time, when we're telling something about our past, we don't necessarily link it all up, so people say, "Ah, right." So you made the decision as a responsible mother, and you're playing both roles. You're the protector and the
Wow.
mother as well at this stage, aren't you? Because you're a single parent, you've got two children, right? And and it's not that you want to leave your kids; it's because you want to protect them, isn't it? Because you make the
Yeah.
decision, and you're not seeing them either anyway, because you've got a full-time job and a part-time job. Other people are bringing up your kids, right? And you
Yep.
don't know how well they're bringing them up. They probably are bringing them up okay. And then you come home one day and you see a guy lying in a pool of blood and you just make the decision, I'm not bringing my kids up here anymore.
Yeah, and I had seen a lot more than that, but that was the pivotal moment that I said, I can't live like this. I can't be a productive individual in society and be a good parent and have a good life if I'm in this environment.
Yeah. So what was the process to get in the military like, and how were you vetted, if you like, by the military recruitment team to make sure that your children were okay, you were okay, and you could do the job?
Well, when the recruiter came to the neighborhood that day and talked to me for an hour, basically, he gave me a rundown of how things would work for me as a single parent. So he explained the guardianship and the paperwork and what I would need to do in order to do that. He also told me that I needed to take a test, a 3-hour test, the ASVAB, with different subjects in order to get a score to detect what job I would be qualified for,
Yeah, yeah.
which that wasn't easy. I'm not a good test taker, but I passed.
Good.
And I also had to go and stay overnight and do a physical examination, like from head to toe, to be qualified physically to get into the military. And then after I passed all of that, I was able to pick a date, pick a job, and pick a date in which I wanted to leave. And I ended up going to Great Lakes, Illinois in the winter.
So that wasn't the sunshine tour then, was it?
It was not. Oh my goodness.
And how long did your training last, by the way?
My training was about, I want to, if I remember correctly, because this has been over 20 years, it was about 9 weeks. And I can remember we were held for 2 weeks because something was going on with the government and the sequential and them getting ready to shut down, and it paused everything federally related. So we felt like we were stuck, but we were 2 weeks behind schedule. So, what could you do?
Yeah. And so you're in now, and what was it? How tough was the training for you, or was it easy, or what?
It was not easy, besides missing home. This is like my second time being away from home.
Yeah,
Like in another state around other people. And I think becoming acclimated to just being around other people who were different and were raised differently and lived in different places, it was a struggle because remember, I came from a white glove house where everything was clean. And then, I'm in a group of people that are like me, and then some people that don't care if it's clean or not. And, just getting to learn personalities and making friends, it
yeah.
was interesting.
I bet you, especially when you get a mix of characters as well, and the different people, and then you're discovering that it's not just kids that don't cooperate. It's
Yeah,
it's
so true.
people in the military as well. So
Yes,
so how did you enjoy? Because you've been in different branches of the military at various times, haven't you? Uh,
I have.
give me a little bit of a feel for that, because in Britain, right, we've got the Territorial Army, which is now called the Reservists, like you guys, and then we've got the
Hmm.
regular army. You have a third branch, though, don't you? You have the like
Space Force now.
yeah, yeah. So how does
Yeah.
all that work?
So, okay. For me, I did 3 years active duty in the Navy. I got out. I took an 8-year break. I did a whole lot of schooling. I mean, a whole lot of schooling. And then I missed the military discipline and the camaraderie. And
Mm.
then I rejoined. I went from the Navy to the Army. My father, my biological father, was in the Navy, and my stepdad was in the Army. So that's why I
Oh,
ended up
right,
in
okay.
those two branches,
Oh,
in case
yeah, because
anybody
you
wants to know.
you had to do that, didn't you? To say, I've got you back. I've got you back. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. Um, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so I caught the point where you said you joined the military, right? And then you met your
Mhm.
husband, didn't you?
I did. So my he's my ex-husband now.
Yeah.
Um, we went to school together, and he was maybe 3 grades behind, so he's a little bit younger than I was. But as I was going into my advanced individual training, which is your specialization school for your job,
Yeah.
um, he was actually graduating from that school, and so you know, rekindled a flame, and we decided that once I finished my advanced individual training and we were both stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, that once we met up, that we would have a relationship and decide if we were going to get married or not. And then we ended up being stationed on the same base, like in walking distance from each other's jobs, and we ended up getting married. Too
Wow.
young, but we did.
Uh, and uh, and then you had your third child. Is that
And then I had my third child. Yeah.
and flipping heck? That must have been because then by this time, well, by this time you got custody back of your first two children as well. So
Yes.
you're in the military. You got three, three
Little kids.
children. Yeah, three kids, and you're holding all that down, and you got a house to look after as well. And how's that going?
Mhm. It was stressful. It was just stressful still acclimating to military life because, you know, once you leave basic training, then you go to your duty station and you have to reacclimate yourself to how the culture is and how things are done in your unit on that base. And it was really tough because I had some issues, some personal issues with my husband as well. He had a drug addiction while he was in the military, which caused some pain points in both of our lives at home and at work. And so it was a lot to balance. And then again, on top of that, my mother being sick and the 26 days that I spent with my mom, taking care of her before she passed on, it was just a lot. I think my spirituality and my ability to have empathy, compassion for others, and resilience helped me get through that situation.
Yeah. And that comes across with your personality, and you're very bubbly, and it's great because you're listening to the podcast, but all what I can see from you, Angela, is a big beaming smile, right?
You
And
make me smile. Thank you.
well, thank you very much, right? So the thing is that I, I got a lot of respect, a respect for females anyway, because I think we're equal. All of us are equal. I have a particular respect for mothers, and when you're in the military, holding the job down, you got three kids, you got a husband who's got a bit of an issue with drugs, and your mother is seriously ill, terminally ill. You're holding all this down. So when did the wheel start to wobble for you?
The wheels started to wobble when, and this is going to be a little emotional for me, so I'm going to try to hold it together. But it really started to wobble for me when I went into labor. I was working. I worked a day up until I had the baby. And my military boss, he ended up driving me to the hospital, which was about 20 minutes away. And he contacted my husband to let him know that I was in labor. And then he went and picked him up, drove him to my car, and then my husband drove my car to the hospital. So my husband's there with me. It takes maybe 6 to 7 hours after I'm in labor for me to have the baby.
Yeah,
And then I had decided that I was going to have a tubal ligation. So I was going to have my tubes cut and burnt because I'm like, this is too much. I have too many children as it is. It's hard.
yeah.
So I don't know if you've had surgery before, but normally, you know, before you have to, if you're having surgery the next day, if you want to eat something, you have to do it before
Yeah, yeah,
midnight,
yeah,
blah, blah,
yeah,
blah.
yeah.
So I sent my husband out to the nearest McDonald's, which was probably like a half a mile away. I said, go grab me something to eat. I haven't eaten all day. I'm starving. He takes all of my belongings, to include my clothes, my wallet, my ID, just basically everything I had with me at the hospital. I didn't know he had taken these things because I
Right.
had nodded off when he left, but he left and I didn't see him again for 2 whole weeks. 2 whole weeks. So when I
Oh,
wake up out of surgery that next day and I'm asking for my husband, they were like, well, I remember you sent him to get you something to eat. He never returned. I'm like, never returned. And then I realized all of my stuff was gone. Um, and so, you know, I had to scramble and get someone to get a car seat to get the baby and me home. And it was October, so it was very cool. And I had no clothes, two hospital gowns and hospital shoes. That's all I had when I left the hospital. No coat, nothing. And then plus my two children. had been left at the babysitter, and the babysitter had no idea that I had had the baby. So it was just so much. It was so hard, but you know, I got through it. Again, my spirituality and my belief that there is a power higher than me that helped me mentally and physically get through that situation.
Well, I've got to say, hats off. I salute you for being able to come through that. And you just bounce back from that, don't you? Because what's happening then with your military career and like 2 weeks, your husband comes back and is that sort of, honey, I'm home, or what sort of things going on at that point? And listen, if you don't want to talk about this, you can say, get lost, Joe. I'm not talking about that.
No, no, no. You're fine. I'm trying to figure out how to say this in the nicest and most professional way without getting into so much detail. I'll say this. It took me getting the police department involved in finding where my husband was. And unfortunately for him, when I sent him for food, he went to get drugs instead. And so he ended up being in a situation with the people that he was getting drugs from that he owed money. And they basically held him hostage. It was really strange, but they actually held him hostage.
Right.
It was really messy. It was. But after that, we sat down and I told him, I said, it's no longer about you getting help. It's about you not being in our lives. And so I had to make another tough decision whether to keep someone in my life that wasn't there and was not contributing to helping
Mm,
or to let them go. So on my own, I could see if I could do a better job than, being in that marriage. And so we got divorced.
right. Okay. So you've had a bit of an emotional roller coaster, to say the least. And what's Angela Pearson? What are you saying to yourself now about your future?
About my future, well, I told my oldest daughter who had a birthday this week, she turned 31. All of my children are adults now. And I was telling her, I said, if I die tomorrow, I will feel good about everything that I've accomplished. And so from now until I expire, my goal is to impact and help as many people as I can, whatever that looks like for them, not to me. That may be someone that's standing on the corner that may need $1. It may be someone that needs a bag or a box to, like carried from point A to point B. It could be giving a speech or helping somebody financially or mentoring somebody, whatever it looks like for that person.
Thank you. And in this time, right? So at this time, your husband's gone now. You decided to separate. What are you doing next? What do you
Say
think?
that it,
When you've said, right, okay, that's enough, hubby. It's end of story, index. What's your position then? Where do you go next after that?
Well, 6 months after that, it was time for me to get out of the military. So I had to figure out how to reintegrate back into society. And it wasn't easy because I've spent 3 years in the military. And the military, as you know, can be very structured as far as them blowing the horn in the morning to wake people
Yeah,
up and then marching to this place and going to get lunch at a certain time and doing these duties. And so I had to come to reality that I'm not going to have that anymore. Like that structure, I think would also help me get through all of those difficult situations that I was having,
yeah,
because those situations were chaotic. And so I had to figure out, what am I going to do? What am I good at? Like I've had this job of recovering and launching aircraft. The guys at the airport that hold the
yeah,
batons and they're saying, hey, go this way and do this. And they do the little dance and stuff.
yeah.
I did that when I first got in. And then once I went to school and took another test, I was able to become like an HR administrator. They call
Yeah,
it a personnel administrator. And that's how I got into HR, my first job in HR. But I was trying to figure out how my military skills equated to civilian skills. And even
yeah,
though we had what they called transitional assistants, where they have this big class all day long, and they teach you about resume writing and interviewing, I still wasn't able to figure out, what am I good at? Like
yeah,
I've been an airman for 3 years. What am I gonna do now?
yeah.
So
Yeah, because it's like you go. you got, I don't know how you do it in your unit, but we used to go to the notice board at 4:30. If we weren't away out in the field on exercise, if we were in camp, 4:30, or as soon as we could get there, we'd go read orders, and it'd tell us what we're going to
Oh,
do. It'd tell us what we're doing the next day. It tells us what time equivalent of what time the bugle sounds for the reveille, what time breakfast is, what time naffy break is, like a coffee break, and what time our lunch
yeah.
is, what time our evening meal is. And then all we got to figure out is what we do with our, if we've got any, our free time. And it's all
Free time. What's that?
structured. Yeah, so it's all structured. So I get it. So transition from the military, what's it like? You know, when you step out and that the big wrought iron gates close behind you and you think, shucks, I'm out.
Yeah, yeah. So, one good thing about that was I had my children. So I had something that I was familiar with that could keep me comfort while I figured things out. But yeah, just like you described it, I could close my eyes and just see me getting those papers saying, you're done. And then I leave the base. And then I look back like, this has been my life for the last 3 years. Okay, where do I go next? Well, I did have an apartment. I ended up having an off base apartment. So I didn't have to find housing once I got
Oh,
out.
that's good.
But then the job search, where do I start? I mean, computers, they still had DOS systems and stuff when I was in
Yeah,
the
yeah, I
Navy.
remember, I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
telling my age there. But I didn't have the luxury of having access to a computer. I didn't even have a car. I got out of the Navy on a medical separation because I was passing out when I was pregnant and they didn't know why. And because of that, I could not go to sea duty. So even though my unit would go once or twice a year on an aircraft carrier for the planes to actually do their training exercises during the day and night,
Yeah.
when you talk about being stationed full time on a ship, I couldn't do that because they didn't know, they never figured out why I was passing out. So that's the reason why I got out of the Navy. But yeah, just trying to figure out who do I talk to? Where do I go to see about finding a job? And guess what? I ended up at a convenience store one day. I stopped in to go grab me a donut. I was like, oh, I'm going to 7-Eleven to get me a donut. And I ended up meeting this lady and having this conversation with her. And sure enough, she worked for Target. And she said, hey, we're going to open a new store in Williamsburg. And Williamsburg was probably like maybe 15 to 20 minutes from where I was living. And she said, why don't you apply? And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is this a miracle or what? Did somebody hear my prayer? Like, and so my first job out of the military was working for Target in their store.
And isn't that great that even though, because you just touched on the fact that effectively you got what could be considered like a medical discharge. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so you're out on your ear. Fortunately, you got accommodation. You've got no clue what you're doing. You've got three kids, single mother, right?
Yeah.
What's happening? Uh, and then all of a sudden you just go into 7-Eleven, you talk to this lady and she says, apply for this job. So kismet, really?
I didn't believe it either, but it was awesome.
So what happened when you put the application in? Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, the application wasn't hard to fill out. It was actually a paper application, again, back in the day.
Yeah,
So I actually had to go to a special satellite office because they hadn't opened the store because the people they were hiring were actually going to be responsible for putting up all the shelves, like starting the store from scratch. This
right.
is what they were hiring for. And so when I went and talked to the lady, she asked me, like we're doing now, she asked me a little bit about what I've done in the last 3 to 5 years. And I was explaining to her. And, she was concerned. She was like, well, you have little kids. Are you going to be okay working at night? Because this was actually an overnight job. And I
Yeah,
told her, don't worry. I'll have childcare. Everything will be fine. Just give me a chance. A lot of times us veterans will tell civilian employees, just give us a chance. You'll see
yeah,
what we
yeah,
can
yeah,
do if you just give me a chance.
yeah.
And so she took a chance and she hired me. She did. And I loved that job too. I did. It was so fun. I
And
worked for
how long?
Target.
How long were you there for?
I was there for about 3 years until I decided to move back to that house that I grew up in with my dad.
Wow.
Um, Yeah, yeah. I decided to go back and live with him for a little while. He needed some help, so we moved in.
So it's coming across that you're pretty much improvise, adapt, and overcome, which we learn in the military, don't we? And
Yes.
you're a occurring person. So you moved back to the home there, and where were you going then? What was happening in the community that was driving you, really?
Well, I ended up when I moved back with my dad, I ended up dating a guy and ended in a domestic violence situation. So I was with my dad for 4 years, well, in that town. And I ended up having, like I said, a domestic violence situation, which prompted me to leave. I actually had to leave. My life was put in danger, and I had to take my children and leave in the middle of the night. And I ended up in a place called Danville, Virginia. And from there, I was in a domestic violence shelter with my children. Now, at this time, I now have 4 children.
Fortunately, wow, yeah. So you know,
Yeah.
so you love kids, don't you?
Oh, I guess you can say that, but we can also say that the tubal ligation that I had after I had my third child did not work. That's how I ended up getting pregnant again. So,
Yeah.
um, but I ended up in the domestic violence shelter, which was an experience that, I don't wish on anyone, but I'm very glad that they have these facilities for people to start over.
Mm,
And it enabled me to actually start over. So I ended up working for Nestle Refrigerated Foods in Danville, Virginia, which that particular plant made Utoni pasta, and they also made Nestle cookie dough. I don't know if you've ever heard of Nestle cookie dough, but
yeah,
it's
I've heard
pretty
of
good.
Nestle. Yeah, Nestle is quite a big concern. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I started my life over and I lived there for about 4 years. My kids were getting older, so we're learning and doing more things. And I got this offer to relocate to another state, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. And then I thought about it and said, hey, if I could take my children with me, then why am I saying no to this? So I swooped my children up and we ended up moving to Ardmore, Oklahoma. I'd never been out in the Midwest.
And I know there are quite a few states in America, and you've lived in seven
In
of them,
seven,
haven't you?
in
Yeah.
in
And,
seven of them,
and
yes.
what just to put that into context from a UK point of view, how many miles does that spread
Oh,
across 7 states?
now I can't tell you mileage because I'm not good at math, but what I can do is use my hands as points. So
Yeah.
Virginia is here, Oklahoma is all the way here.
Right, so
Um,
we're looking at the east and the west and its opposite sides, really.
yes, yes, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
It
Wow.
was a long way from home, I'll tell you that.
Wow. So you made this move, and by this time, you're starting to get a feel for what you want to do in life, aren't you? Really?
Yeah, yeah. So remember, I did human resources before I got out of the Navy. So that was something that I was sticking to. And then I branched off from human resources to safety, and I ended up being a safety manager for about 12 years in several different states as well.
And where did you feel out of those 7 states? I know it's probably difficult because there's different things happening in different states at different times. Where
Mhm.
where are you feeling more comfortable with now? Sort of,
Well, Virginia is always going to be home. There's no place like home.
right.
I eventually plan on retiring and moving back to Virginia. And I'm in New York now. Again, this
Yeah,
is the seventh state I've lived in. So I've lived in Virginia, Georgia, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, Pennsylvania, and New York.
that's
And
pretty good. There must, hey, you've got to write a song on that. You know, there's got to be like pop music, London, Paris, New
yeah,
York. Yeah. So
that would be cool.
yeah, so you're in New York now. Well, tell me what happened for your journey to get to New York, actually, because what I know from what we discussed is you started to look at foundations and how you can help people and equality and diversity. So what got you onto that sort of stream in life?
So working as a safety manager for 12 years, it took its toll on me because basically most safety managers are on call 24/7, especially if you're working in like oil and gas, if you're working in manufacturing and distribution. And so I decided to leave that industry and go into Lean Six Sigma. So I became a Lean Six Sigma coach for GlaxoSmithKline, GSK.
Yeah.
And I did that for about 3.5 years. And I was working on my doctorate degree during that time. So I started my doctorate degree in 2013 while I was a safety manager working at a beef slaughter plant in Fort Morgan, Colorado. But once I got to GlaxoSmithKline, that last year I ended up going through two managers. So the first manager was terminated, and I ended up reporting to a quality manager who was really a really good friend. And then he ended up dying in a car accident. And when he passed away, he was one of the few leaders that I could say was a real leader that I've experienced in my life as far as like giving back and pouring into employees. And it was just difficult to work there after he passed away. So I ended up moving on and getting into diversity, equity, and inclusion, which that's what I do now. I ended up opening my business probably 2 months before he died, OD Synergistics Consulting. And, I ended up doing a lot of DEI work. And that's what I'm doing today, working for a company called Ithaca Harbors and doing diversity, equity, and inclusion and loving it.
And thank you for that. That's interesting. I'd like you to identify, because being in the military, if you're not a good manager, you don't get promoted, right? Because you got to be. But in civilian street, I find that some people do get promoted who shouldn't really be even
Yeah.
washing glasses, really.
Well, that happens in the military too. So yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, it does. But I mean, you sort of get spotted a bit easier in the military.
Yeah.
So what was it about this manager that you thought, wow, you're a good guy? What were the qualities?
The qualities were he spoke up on difficult topics in meetings with executive leaders where most people would not speak up. And when I say speak up, he spoke for the employees,
Yeah.
because he realized that there were a lot of politics and he would see things going on that in his moral compass, he knew it wasn't right. And so, he would have those difficult conversations in a group setting with leadership to say, hey, I understand that this is a business need for this, but we have these people unrealistically working and changing their shifts like every other month, and we're not giving them the work-life balance that they need in order to be the best employees that we need them to be. Like, we're going to wear them down and burn them out because we can't figure out as leaders how to make things right, And so he fought those battles even when people, fought against him for speaking up.
Yeah, and talking about managers in the military, that you do get ones that aren't so good. Because I remember a confidential that I got, a confidential, like when as a corporal I was given a reference, like my annual performance review, and my staff sergeant said to me, uh, "You care more about the people you command than your own career." And I thought, well, isn't that what we're supposed to do? We're middle management. I'm supposed to look after the guys, right? And I come back to you to give you feedback on what's happening. Because what happened, the reason I got the reprimand, I suppose, is we've been working for, my guys have been working for about 3 days, and we hadn't had much sleep. We were exhausted, right? And when we got back, because we were Royal Engineers, so we were putting the bridge back where it's supposed to be, because it has to be stored, right? And the big, massive things. And we just finished and thought, right, we're finishing. Then a senior officer came across and said, no, can you move that from there to there and there to there? And that would have taken us like 5 hours to do that. I said, sir, with all due respect, my men are exhausted. I can come back, we'll come back later, we've got to have some sleep. He said, no, I want you to do it now. I said, no, we're finishing. And I took the men away, and I said, just indent for us, and we'll come back next week. And from that, I got to have an interesting conversation with my staff sergeant. So So it's important that you recognize the difference between good management, and you are quite correct. There is bad management in the military. I just found that it was not as common, I suppose, as it is
Mm,
in civilian street, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
I suppose that has helped you, hasn't it, with
it
building
has.
your moral compass?
Yes. Yes. I didn't get a moral compass when I joined the military. They didn't issue me one. I already had it. I already had it when I came in. My mother was tough. I will
Yeah,
say that. At least she was tough on me, the middle child. And she instilled some things in me where, take care of yourself, but also take care of others. And she not only told me that, she showed me that in her behavior. So I watched her do
yeah,
things for other people, but I also watched her break down. I can remember being 12 years old and we didn't have a car, even though we lived in the center of town and we were like in the middle of everything. We could walk everywhere, so we didn't have a car. My parents didn't drive, but I remember taking a cab with my mother an hour away for her to go to the seventh floor to a mental ward because she had had a nervous breakdown. She had just dealt with so much with having breast cancer, with having 9 kids, with having 2 children die, and she was actually, we weren't in a traditional household. My mother worked and my stepdad stayed home and cooked and took care of everybody. He didn't clean, she did the cleaning, but they
right.
had the reverse roles and non-traditional roles. So it was different. It was. I watched her be strong, but I also saw her at her weakest moments too, and it helped me to understand that you can't always be strong. You can't always be everything for everyone. Be what you can when you can, but don't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself too.
Which thank you for being open with that detail, personal, sensitive information, which has driven you to the equality and diversity, really, hasn't it? And what's the biggest lesson that you've learned, and certainly of how to deal with failure? And let me frame that term, how to deal with failure. I fully recognize that some of the greatest lessons that we learn are from times when we're down and failure. I do not feel necessarily that we've failed just because we've experienced failure, though, as if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So, how do I deal with failure? I look at fail, and there's an acronym that I use that I've learned from someone else that calls it says first attempt in learning. And so, with the Lean Six Sigma coaching side of me, I tell myself that everything is an experiment. And I wish I could have told myself this 30 years ago because I
Yeah.
probably would have done a lot more sooner, but I'm where I'm supposed to be. But I'll tell myself that I have to start my mindset. I have to change my mindset and how I'm thinking about things because I have to believe what I tell myself in order to accept that I'm wrong, that part of the failure. And then I make myself accountable for whatever I did in order to contribute to that failure. And then lastly, I challenged myself to think of maybe 2 to 5 things that I could do differently. And then I start a new experiment. And there you have it. It's an experiment. So I see it as an experiment because I create a safe place for me to fail. So that way, when I do fail, it's not so bad,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel so bad.
And I love the fact that in that brief resume of how you deal with failure, there was the part where you accept your responsibility for playing your part in that failure.
Yes,
And I think that's a really brave thing to do. And sometimes, because I do it as well, and sometimes it hurts, doesn't it?
it does.
It
It does.
Yeah, because you think, well, what part in this life's play did I contribute? And and
Hmm.
and then yeah, that's brilliant. So on the flip side, right? Because
Hmm.
you learn a lot from the failure. How how do you deal with success, and how do you recognize success, whatever success is for you?
So success. I would say that I have identified and I'm aware of my superpower, and everybody has a superpower. And for me, it has been empathy. My ability to put myself in someone else's place and to imagine going through what they're going through, because I've had a lot of loss. Even in the last year and a half, I've lost 10 immediate family members. My sister, most recently, less than 2 months ago. And so, it's one of those things where success is whatever you define it as. And for me, it's getting through the day. It's making sure that I serve others in the job that I have, in the career that I have, that I do nice things, not only for myself, but for other people. And I mean, it's not one thing to me, it's multiple things. Just you've heard about my background. So just making it through the day without an episode of some sort, it's like success for me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you get to the end of the day with the stuff that's going on in your life, you just think, yes, get in there.
Yes. Yes.
That's another day, another
I'm
day,
alive.
and we're still here. And then in the morning,
Yes.
you wake up and you think, wow, we've got another day to make a great opportunity, a great success.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, do you know, because you've been surrounded by not only people who maybe not supported you as good as they could have done, but you've also been supported by a great social network, haven't you? Strong people who have supported you through thick and thin, even to your child minders and stuff, and people like I picked up when you gave birth to your third child, and your husband, your then husband, had done a runner with the money, that your childminder was still there looking after your kids, your two children, and she didn't know where you were, and she just stuck to it. So with that in mind, how important do you think it is to have a great, strong social network?
Well, I would say that having a strong social and business network is very crucial for unlocking opportunities, gaining knowledge, and building a support system. It also enhances your brand. Like a lot of people go through life and don't understand that how they are, how they speak, how they present themselves, what they do for others is their brand. And
Yeah.
it also connects you to like valuable collaborations and provide that feedback for growth. And what I like about networking is that it exposes you to diverse perspectives. And I don't know if it's just me or it's been ingrained in me because of the HR work that I've done most of my life, but I'm always seeking diverse perspectives. And then that helps me make better decisions and also stay competitive. And ultimately, it's networking is a powerful tool for personal and for professional success.
Mm. Yeah, and you did touch on the business as well in that statement, because we look at how you first got into Target to manage a store. You were in 7-Eleven buying a donut, right? And then you just got chatting to a lady. That's social networking. Then blinking at all of a sudden you're in charge of a Target store from the get-go. And then you're building your business network. So well done, you go, girl. Yeah, that was pretty good.
I didn't even know it was networking at the time. I just happened to be getting a donut and the lady was beside me and we started talking. So,
And that's the point. And you see, that is why I wanted to pick up on that, because this podcast is about, and by the way, you're listening to this podcast now, you don't have to be a veteran, you don't have to be ex-military, but we're just particularly for guys getting out of the military, they don't understand what networking is about. So you just hit the nail on the head there. Just social interaction is networking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very important. Oh yeah.
And even though we've not used the terminology itself, we've touched on it on so many things, whether it was the recruitment sergeant who said, yeah, we can do that. We can look after your children. We can do this. Having a good coach or mentor, how important do you think that's been in your life, and how important do you think it is for anyone who's looking for success, whatever success is to them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm going to give you a general answer so it's not just specific to veterans, but anyone that's listening.
Yeah.
But a good coach and mentor, basically, I feel like they provide invaluable guidance and help you set goals. At least they help me do that. And I do that as well when I coach and mentor, but also develop skills and stay accountable. I like to say I hold myself accountable, but I inspire accountability in others because we
Mm,
actually can't hold people accountable literally. But um, you know, and also it's a confidence booster, both professionally and personally for growth. And I just think being able to have people that can give you guidance, but also give you that feedback, it helps to inspire and motivate you to become more than what you are, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's a good point because I think that leadership and this is my take on leadership, someone who can get somebody to do something they would not do if you had not been there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and
So true.
and I think that shines through with you and how your experience that you've had, good and not so good, you use that
Yeah.
now. You use that now because you can bring that to the table. And
Mm-hmm.
isn't it interesting when you're listening to someone and you're thinking, yeah, yeah. And it's like worn the t-shirt, read the book and everything, but you don't come across like that because it could sound a bit narcissistic. But the thing is
Right.
as you're talking to someone, you can gain empathy with them and say, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can guess how you're feeling on that. So you already mentioned it. I just want you to identify it more specifically. How
Mm-hmm.
transferable, those skills that you learned in the military, how transferable do you think they are to civilian life?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of organizations, civilian organizations, still don't get it as it relates to them looking at someone that's been in the military and the job that they had and actually translating that into civilian activity. And the skills that are gained in the military are highly transferable,
Mm.
providing veterans with that discipline, the leadership, the adaptability, and teamwork abilities that are very valuable in any work environment. And these skills also enhance everyday life, things such as time management, decision making under pressure. Oh my goodness, tell me about that one. And effective communication. The resilience and strong work ethic that's developed in the military makes veterans uniquely prepared to excel and be successful in both their careers and personal lives. And, it helps them to overcome challenges and succeed in any path that they choose.
Yeah, definitely. And for someone who's listening to this, whether they're still in the military, left the military, or even not in the military, and are having either a good day, a bad day, or they want to even get even better results, what's the one tip that you would give to them? The one, you can give a couple if you want, but a strong tip that would help them
Hmm.
get on.
Well, the top tip that I would give to a veteran or someone who's leaving the military is to leverage the transferable skills that they gained in the service, just like we talked about the leadership, the
Yeah.
discipline, the adaptability, the teamwork, and then clearly articulate how those skills can apply to civilian roles because sometimes veterans and people that are leaving the military have to help civilian employers understand, how this relates in that environment. And I think building a strong personal network, as you said before, seeking out mentors and coaches who can help guide that transition into the civilian workforce is also crucial too. I didn't have that. And
Yeah.
talking to my younger self, I would say, hey, partner with someone that can help you understand what you do and how you can do this in the civilian world. And again, understanding your superpower. You have to know what that is.
Yeah, yeah, you got to discover that. So thank you very much for that. And before, because we're coming to the end, and I could just chat to you for days, honestly.
Same here.
Yeah. So, what does the future hold for you? I mean, for Dr. Angela Pearson, what is your mission? Because, while you're processing that question, I'll tell you, you know what my mission is to help 1 million veterans and business owners, entrepreneurs achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. What is your mission now, and how are you doing that?
So my mission is to help everyone that I can. And right now I'm doing that through an organization called the Food Pantries for the Capital District. We deal with food insecurity, and this is in upstate New York. So our goal is to ensure that every New Yorker has food for themselves and their family.
Wow.
And so I go out every other week and I do fundraising. I actually do volunteer work to talk about the organization so people can understand who they are and what they do and how they can help, and if they need help, where to get help from, you know. And I just want to make sure that people have the basic needs that they need, because having been homeless, having been in a domestic violence shelter, I understand how something as simple as a blanket or food and water and just somebody's hand to hold when I'm crying and feeling bad, like how important things that seem so small can be so big and impactful.
Yeah. And that is important. And you've not just read one book on it, you've read quite a few books, and you've got quite a few t-shirts on it as well, and watched the film, right? And
Yes.
when you're in that deep brown sticky stuff, sometimes you just need a hand to hold on you. And if you can
Yes.
reach out and just get that person who's going to say, come on, and maybe put their arm around the shoulder or give you the kick up the bum, if whichever one's needed.
Yep.
Because sometimes you
Yep.
don't need the arm around the shoulder. Sometimes you need a size
A
10
swift kick.
or a size 5 up the jacksie. So
Yes.
listen, how can people, because I'm sure that you've moved a lot of people. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to have a chat? What's the best way? Not to be inundated by phone calls, by the way, but if they wanted
No, you're fine.
if they wanted to reach out to you and contact you, what would be the best way?
So linkedin.com, I am under Dr. Angela D. Pearson, D as in Delta or a dog.
Yeah.
That's the best way to reach out to me in LinkedIn.
Well, listen, thank you very much for your service to the country. Thank you very so much for your service to the community. And I know that a lot of people have had and become better people and have better lives because of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much and what you do.
Thank you. Right,
You're welcome.
thank you. JoeTeams.com is a resource I have created to fulfill my mission to help 1 million veterans and business entrepreneurs like you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. JoeTeams.com is jam-packed full of valuable resources specifically designed to help you on your journey to success. Visit JoeTeams.com now to find out how you can join and start your journey to success immediately. That's JoeTeams.com, JoeTeams, JoeTeams.com. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day.